Hi, welcome to my channel Cloud with Girish. In the previous video workshops, I explained how to set up live tail logging in AWS CloudWatch. The setup of log group live tail logging was completed using AWS console. Subsequently, I also explained how to use a programmatic approach to start the log live tail using Python and Boto3. In this video, I will demonstrate another way to get live tail for the selected cloud log group using AWS CLI. I will use AWS CLI to write a command that will publish the live tail based on the CloudWatch group and filter pattern provided. If you are a Linux user, you are likely familiar with the tail command for viewing live logs. CloudWatch live tail feature works similarly, allowing you to monitor logs in real time as your functions are executed. This feature is incredibly helpful for various use cases, including debugging issues, monitoring deployments, command center oversight, identifying performance issue, and more. If you are interested in prior video on the CloudWatch log topics, please refer to the links in the description. Let's take a look at the architecture. We have Lambda, EC2, or other AWS services which are publishing the logs using the CloudWatch and using the log groups. CloudWatch supports log, alarm, metrics, and many more functions. So we're going to focus here on the logs and live tail. So from the selected CloudWatch log group, we want to have a live tail based on a filter pattern that we will provide. I'm using the AWS CLI in this scenario. So AWS CLI is creating the live tail, has a parameter for filter pattern, and then also have an interactive mode which allow to highlight a term that we want to provide. Prerequisite for this workshop is familiarity with AWS CLI, VS Code or IDE of your choice, basic understanding of AWS CloudWatch, and there are also links here for the previous workshop which talks about AWS logging, monitoring, auditing using CloudWatch and CloudTrail, another workshop around Lambda log aggregation using CloudWatch, and then previous workshop on live tail using AWS console and Python Boto3 SDK. Let's get started. We'll look at few points about CloudWatch live tail. We'll review the CloudWatch log group. We'll review the Lambda function, and then we'll review the AWS CLI and the parts of it like command and the filter pattern and highlight term. We'll run the AWS CLI command and start the live tail. We'll invoke the Lambda function and monitor the live tail for the filter log, and then at the end we'll do a cleanup to delete the log group and end the live tail session. Let's look at few points about CloudWatch live tail. CloudWatch live tail provides option to refine and target specific log data. Use highlight to flag event that match your specified term. Use filter to limit the event displayed in the session. You can select up to 10 log groups to include in the live tail session. This is as of recording of this video. AWS may update this limit, so please refer to AWS documentation for the latest limit. One point to note here is that CloudWatch live tail is charged on a per minute basis during the session, making it a flexible on-demand solution for troubleshooting and monitoring. But that also means that use it while you need it, but once you're done monitoring the live tail session, you should terminate it so that you don't have ongoing cost for the session. Let's review the CloudWatch log group. In this use case, for the CloudWatch log live tail demonstration, I will use the log group AWS Lambda meeting note summarizer. This log group is already in place for an existing Lambda function, and all logs generated by these functions are stored here. This setup allows us to monitor and analyze the log data produced by this Lambda function in real time. Next, we'll look at the Lambda function used here. This Lambda function that we are using is pre-configured with logging capability. That means when we invoke this function, it will put the logs in a CloudWatch log group. This function supports a generative AI use case and include guardrail to ensure data security and compliance. For example, if PII data is detected by this function, a guardrail log entry will be generated in the CloudWatch log group to flag the occurrence. This helps maintain data safety by providing insight into sensitive data handling during AI operation. We will look at the AWS CLI command. So the command that we use is using the AWS CLI, and once executed, this command will monitor the AWS CloudWatch log in real time, a function that is referred as livetail, and it has the option to filter the logs. It also has the option to highlight the desired term in the log using the interactive mode. You will need to ensure that you have AWS CLI 2.16 or higher installed, and you can run AWS version command to check the AWS CLI version install. So in my example here, when I run this command on my terminal, like AWS version, it's telling me that I have 2.21.3 version installed for this AWS CLI. Of course, it's higher than 2.16, so I'm good to go with this command. Let's look at example of AWS CLI command. So the first command here is print all logs. So if I use the command AWS log start livetail, and I do need to provide the identifier, which is the ARN for my log group, to this command, and that's what I'm doing it. This is my ARN that's taking to a Lambda function like contact handler. I know this is not the same log group that I talked about in the use case. We will see it in another slide, but I just wanted to show an example of the command. You can change the ARN to whatever log group, but this is how it will print all the logs with no filter. Now this will be a lot of logs, and that's not our intent. So what I want to show you that how to filter this log, and in this second command here, which is essentially the same command, I'm adding a parameter for log event filter pattern, and I'm saying, hey, my filter pattern is database. So in this log, if you see a reference to database, that's the log I want to see in my livetail. And the third one here is also CLI support the interactive log. So I can pass a mode parameter, and I say, hey, I want to initiate the interactive mode for this log. And once I am in that mode, interactive mode, I can press the H to highlight the term and C to clean the highlighted term, right? We will see it in action in the coming slide also. Now, once we're done with it, we can terminate the session by pressing the Control C. So now, since we understand the structure of the AWS CLI command, let's run the AWS CLI command and start the livetail session. So here I'm passing the command AWS log start livetail. I'm passing the ARN to the log group, which in this case is like per my use case is a meeting note summarizer log group for my GenAI app. And then I also filtering it on a guardrail because I want to make sure whenever guardrail is invoked for the PII data, then I want to see that in my livetail. Now, when I run this command, and if you get a region error like this, I just wanted to call this out. If you get this error that, hey, cross-region request not supported, region must be US East 2, I'm getting this error because when I run this command, my default credential for my command line interface for CLI is set up for my default region is US East 2, and my log group is in US East 1, and that's why I'm getting this error. So to prevent this error or to resolve this error, I can pass another parameter where I specifically call out the region where this log group is, and that's what I'm doing in this next command. I'm saying, hey, the region is US East 1. So here is the command I want to run. Here is the ARN to my meeting note summarizer. Here is my filter pattern, and here is my region that I want to have this log start the livetail from. Okay. Next, let's invoke the Lambda function. We need to invoke the Lambda function so that log get generated. So I'm using this Lambda function. This function is to support a GenAI app that I have created. This app uses multiple AWS services, like including API Gateway, Lambda, Bedrock, and others. So I will pass my data here. I will invoke the function, and it will create the log entry in my CloudWatch log group. Now, since I'm creating the log, I want to monitor the live tail because that's really the intent of this workshop. So when I'm monitoring the live tail for filtered log based on the CLI command that I initiated, and when the log is getting created, I expect to see something like this on my screen, right? So it's saying, hey, I got the log, and that log actually has a guardrail intervention, and this is when it happens, right? So I have my metrics here, right? I have like the what time it got invoked and so on. Now, as many times you invoke the Lambda function, and whenever it finds the guardrail, you will expect to see more entries here, right? That's the idea, that it's a live tail, so it will show up live. Now let's try the interactive mode next, right? So it's the same command. I'm just passing another parameter called mode interactive, and once I'm in interactive mode, I'm pressing the H, and I'm going to enter the term guardrail to highlight that term, just to show an example. So if you see that when I invoke the Lambda function again and monitor the tail, this time I see that guardrail is highlighted in a different color, and that's really what I wanted to accomplish. I'm not only filtering it, but I'm also want to highlight on a specific term, and that's what this example is showing me. So if you see the previous, it's all in same color, guardrail intervene, and when I'm in interactive mode, I am saying that highlight the guardrail, and that's what it's doing. So I can terminate the session by pressing the escape here. So I will be out of the interactive mode, and then at the end, as I always suggest, do the cleanup. If you don't use it anymore, delete the log group and the live tail session, and that way basically you don't incur the ongoing cost in your cloud account. So in this workshop, we successfully demonstrated how to implement a live tail for CloudWatch logs using AWS CLI. If you watched the previous workshop on setting up a live tail using the AWS console, you now know an alternative method to achieve the same functionality using AWS CLI. Logging and monitoring are essential components of observability, and mastering different techniques can greatly enhance your skill in this area. So now you can see that how you can set up through console, or you can use Python SDK, Boto 3 SDK, or you can even use AWS CLI, right? I mean, different techniques, similar end result. Basically, you are monitoring the live tail. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. I'm constantly working on new content covering various AWS topics. So please take a moment to like the video and subscribe to the Cloud with Girish channel. Your support helps me continue creating valuable AWS tutorial and workshop. Stay tuned for more exciting content. Thank you.